We're live.
Live.
Yay.
Yay! Live, live, live. Welcome, everyone. I'm Megan Conter,
And I'm Jessica Fernley. And
and
this
this is
is the
the
Meghan
Meghann
and Jessica
Jessica
Show.
Show. We have to reverse that so we can say it at the same time.
I know.
Well, why don't you introduce our topic for today? And if you're someone who's going to join us at any point or you're catching the replay, be sure to tag hashtag replay, but please comment anytime if you're here with us live, any questions that you have or thoughts or observations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, today we are talking about money mindset for 6 and 7 figure women entrepreneurs. And like the reason I wanted to focus this, I mean, like it's such a great topic. But the reason I think it's really important is that I think often once we've hit 6 figures and 7 figures, you can just be like, I'm clearly fine with money mindset. I don't need to think about it. But that's when actually the really big blocks start to happen. And any time in your business that you're starting to either lose your energy or see your revenue plateau, I always think that that's quite an important like time to actually not just look at like the mechanics of the business. Are we doing everything enough? Are we working hard enough? But actually to look inward and be like, do I actually have blocks that I'm not aware of? Am I actually pushing money away when actually the universe is trying to give it to me? So we have the wonderful Whitney Alexandra with us today as our special guest. Shall I read the thing that you said, Whitney, to introduce you? So talking about this topic, Whitney said, women are wired to give. In business, this mindset creates a dynamic of undercharging and over-delivering. Oh, isn't that true? The result is women hustling to the point of burnout, settling financially, and not properly recognizing their own incredible talents. Shifting their money mindset is the key to their success. Amen to that. I feel that so much. Now, Whitney, do you want to just spend a couple of minutes telling us like who you are, where you're located in the world? Go for it.
Yeah, happy to. So I am based out of Toronto. Today I have the pleasure of being in New York. So that is always fun. I'm constantly traveling, meeting new clients, and I'm a performance coach. I love to talk about it. Lights my heart on fire to know that women are making more and more and more money and doing wonderful things with it. We know that we are wired to give, and because of that, there are so many amazing ripple effects that now, others that are benefiting as a result of great money mindset and a powerful force that we've got.
Oh, I love that. It's awesome, isn't it? And like literally the world is changed when women start making more money and they create this ecosystem for the women in businesses around them who they need to bring in to support them. So like it's this wonderful like positive change in the world, and it all starts with money mindset. Meghann, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just, I'm sure Whitney feels this too or talks about this. It's the unfortunate thing about money mindset is that it starts in our childhood, and a lot of it is out of our control when we are, when we're growing up. But it then becomes the more aware that we become as adults, it becomes our choice as to how we are going to react to it, or if we're going to be the last ones in our families that are going to have that story running the show. And I think that's what a lot of women who surpass those ceilings do. They decide this is stopping with me, this poverty mindset, this scarcity mindset, this pattern of whatever. And the cool thing with money is that it is energy. So it taps into so many different things, right? And it can kind of be a Klingon, if you will, to other challenges that we have. So there's never enough personal growth and personal development that we can do to just let go of more and more of that baggage. As we get older, we're going to keep collecting some of that, or we're going to become aware of new things. So that's the exciting part for those of us that are like myself and Jessica, who are wired for growth. It is a pain in the arse for many when they're like, man, I thought I was through this. I thought that I had conquered this mountain. I thought that I had da da da. And don't get me wrong, there are days when I'm like, dear Lord, why do I have to go through yet another echelon of this endless video game that I put myself in? But it's most
It's
of us,
part of the up level, isn't it?
it
It's
is.
like
It's all part of it.
it's the cloud that descends and you're like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And then you pop out the other side and you're like, oh, a ton of money just showed up. That's fun. How did I do that? And you almost forget straight away, don't you, that like you've been going through this massive thing, because that's how you know when you've done the up level, when you receive the thing that you want to be receiving.
And sometimes it's not money, right? Sometimes it's abundance in another way. So I think that's the interesting thing about money being an energy, is that that energy can show up in different ways. It can show up in more ease, more flow, more, generative things happening in your life. And yes, it also does show up as money. So I think that can also create confusion for people when they're like, well, I wanted $500, but I got better communication with my spouse. Or I wanted $5 million, but I got, a discount on my, can't think of anything good example, but it's the things don't show up necessarily as tit for tat. So that's another interesting part of the growth journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Gratitude for the thing that you received rather than the thing that you requested.
Right.
That one's a tough one. That one is a tough one when you think about, how do I be grateful in this moment when I'm very clear on what I've asked for? But you're absolutely true. It's like prosperity coming in all forms. Like, I'll pick on the CEO that I went for dinner last night. I said, I would love to buy dinner for you, to take you for dinner. And she said, I'd really like for us to split it. And so my go-to line is, don't say no to prosperity. Like, don't tell the universe you've got enough. Like, let me do this, because I want to, and it feels good for me. And I would love for, especially my clients, to be used to receiving, not to pay their way or pay their share of things. So it's like you said, it's a totally different energy, thinking about, I can do mine and you can do yours another time, or this just makes me feel good. But yeah, don't say no to prosperity. Key message today.
I wonder if we can start with a pinpointed time in our lives when we recognized an old money story that was running the show, or an old limiting money mindset, because I think that's really helpful, that we kind of look back in our past. Whitney, do you recall one? I'm sure you do. That you tell your
100.
Yeah, just pick your favorite poison.
Yeah, there are a million. And, I'll from earlier this year, we went to a retreat. It was a big, beautiful home that we were staying in. The retreat home, we saw just this gorgeous, thousands and thousands of square feet. And it was one of those moments for me where, like, childhood Whitney didn't even know that this existed. Right? Like, that there were homes this big that weren't in the movies, that regular people might live in a house this size, and I grew up in, middle class and very well taken care of with my family, but it was still one of those things where I didn't even believe it was possible. And so, it was interesting. It's like 30 some years later, still feeling like, oh, wow, right, people do live in houses this big. And so that was one that sort of popped out that I haven't seen for a while.
It's interesting, isn't it, when it pops out and you're like, oh, I forgot about that. Like, mindset can be very sneaky. Can I share one of mine?
Please.
So, like, one thing that I've had to work quite hard to get over is kind of almost like money trauma. And when I first got married 13 years ago, my husband was in full-time education, and like within 6 months of us getting married, I had a nervous breakdown and had to quit my corporate career. So we went from being like quite comfortable to suddenly being like, wow, we're like pretty much destitute. And it was things that you see like played out in the media, certainly in the UK at the moment, with kind of not being able to afford to put the heating on, or like getting a big electricity bill and just literally being like, we just don't have this money. What are we going to do? And like something that I was conscious of, like in the early days of my business, where sometimes I would be looking at stuff and being like, there's not enough money here to pay like what I need to pay out. And then that's that terrible fear of like, oh my gosh, the money is going to run out. There's not enough. And like, I didn't know anything about mindset even when I started my business, let alone like before I'd even done it. So like 12 years ago, like we were going through money trauma because I really didn't believe that money was renewable. I didn't have any inkling of abundance. And so like that has been something that at times, like I've had a spreadsheet in my business so I can literally see everything that's going in and out. And like I've been looking at the spreadsheet, not because like I need reassurance, but because actually my body is responding to, oh my gosh, the money is running out. And then you look at it and you're like, it's actually not. It's like, it's really not running out at all. And I think it's that disconnect between the paths that our brains have been down before that feel familiar and actually the situation that we are now in. I found it a very like baffling and exciting but terrifying thing that actually we can change our relationship with money. We can change that narrative. And I love what you said before, Meghann, about kind of this ends here. Because it's absolutely, we've received so many different narratives over time, haven't we? And like just being able to see like in physical terms, like look at what we're doing through our businesses. We are changing our lives. We're changing the trajectory that our whole families are on. That's not nothing, is it?
No. And you know what's interesting about this conversation around, it ends with me. In my situation, my parents did not verbalize anything that was scarcity. So nor did they. I was fortunate to grow up in upper middle class America in Colorado. And so I'm extremely grateful for that. I'm extremely grateful for the upbringing that my parents brought me. I did not have any trauma around money. So for me, what happened was when I left the coop, flew the coop and went out on my own. And especially when I started my business in 2009 in the recession with zero money in the bank, with zero experience being an entrepreneur in social media, which nobody knew anything about. So I like to joke that if I made it through those ramen years, I can make it through literally anything, because when you're making like $20,000 a year and you're trying to feed yourself and have a roof over your head, that's quite the thing. But for me, it was the proof that I could make it through all of that was showed me a lot. It showed me a lot about myself. It showed me a lot about my character, about my resilience. But I also was fortunate enough to start my spiritual journey around that same time. So I was understanding the concept of money and energy being intertwined. And not that helped a lot of times in those times where it was really, the bank account
we have to learn how to do that, don't we? It doesn't just happen.
Absolutely. Right. And so actually what I can remember having the hardest time doing, which it's funny how our money stories play into what we've created in our later lives. Because one of the things that I was struggling with most after I got past the ramen years and I got into more sustainable business years, it took me yet another probably 3 to 4 years to cross over that $100,000 mark. And that is a big reason, Whitney, why I started the Dames, which is a group for women running 6- and 7-figure businesses, because I knew all the battle scars that I had gathered in crossing over that mark and how we need support and community for those who are growing to the next levels as we're transforming the planet and reality for women and so many other things. But what I uncovered in that journey and that wall that I kept hitting was that I had a money story that I had made up subconsciously that I could not out-earn my father.
That is so common.
And nobody told me this. This is what I had to realize in self-discovery. And so when I realized, holy cow, I have to let go of that. I have to get myself through that eye of that needle, or I won't be able to make 6 figures. And then I won't be able to make mid 6 figures and high 6 figures and into 7 figures. That story kept creeping up, and it took me, man, I still feel like sometimes I struggle with that. I'm like, oh, I'm having a rough period. Well, I'm not as good as dad. And he would never say anything like that. In fact, when I brought this up to him, he was like, what? Why are you thinking about that? I'm like, it's not logical, but it's so interesting. And then how it can either hinder us or it can be this great teacher to help us get past those blocks.
Well, isn't it true that we are the meanest to ourselves?
Of course.
And we are we say the meanest things upstairs and no one really hears it, right? Like you typically don't talk about it, right? You know,
Right.
in this case, you were able to say like, this is how I'm thinking about something, but not, you know, you had the skill to be able to interrogate that belief that wasn't true.
Right.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So when you are working with people, Whitney, what are some of those things that you want everyone to look at in themselves and as it relates to their money stories?
So I thought it would be really fun if we did like a quick little quiz. You know, it's not
Yes.
quite a Cosmo quiz, but like if you think about like, you know, 10 sort of points of blocks, and this is a good gauge, I think, for people to self-identify, you know, how many blocks do they have? What are the blocks that maybe they're thinking of or to reflect on later? So one of the blocks that I will see is like an income plateau or an income ceiling. So that you talked about one, I can't make more than this. And in your case, it was about your dad, but it might be one of those things like I could never reach more than $10,000 every month. That might be the block just because it doesn't seem possible. You know, so that's one. Usually there's a fear or some sort of negative consequence. So it could be something about, you know, I'm worried that if I'm too successful or I make too much money, I'm going to lose all of my friends, my relationship is going to fall to pieces, you know, my family's going to come after me for money. Like those are, you know, some of those negative consequences and a fear that holds you back from sort of getting through that block. Sabotaging your success. So, you know, I make a big sale or I do something, my business is going great. And then all of a sudden I think, you know, okay, now is the time to upgrade and get this massive IT project underway, which, you know, so sort of sabotaging your own success when you don't really need to do that. You see a lot of people do it with accidents or lost money, things like that. Low expectations is one. So I need just this much money to pay my bills and make my rent or pay my people. And sometimes there isn't enough left to pay their own team or to be comfortable, but it's sort of like settling.
That's the worst part.
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine you're the CEO of a 6-figure business and you can't pay yourself, but everyone else feels good about their pay. So that definitely is one. I see a lot of people that hold on to a past money mistake. So, you know, for example, I have a client that invested a really large sum of money building a big educational tool, lost that money. It never really took off. And that is a story that just continues to haunt them. I don't want to invest, you know, I had this bad idea. I don't want to invest any more money. So, you know, I'm going to bootstrap this other stuff. Another one that shows up is just not taking action, like quick enough. So not asking for a referral, not asking to get the sale, not taking the information, not sending the invoice when you've already done the work, right? Like not asking for a payment up front. You know, there's a lot of those where it's just like, maybe I'll do that later. Another one I see is like hoarding money. So I have a client that, you know, grew up in a position where they didn't have a lot of money. They were struggling to, I'm very dark where I am.
He's in the dark. He just entered the Twilight Zone, or maybe needs a disco lamp. Oh, it's funny.
Man, somebody heard me talking about hoarding and they decided, let's save on the power bill. So yeah, fear of spending, fear of losing it all. So, you know, and I've done these great things, but this could be it. This could be the month that breaks me. You know, it's sort of that imposter syndrome that goes with it.
It's the pressure of success as well, isn't it? And like, well, I've done this, but like, what if I can't maintain it? Like that, I think that is an instinct that like when you get past 6 figures, it's a whole new level of fear that you've never felt before.
Yes, yeah, now you have something to lose.
And then the next echelon comes at 7 figures because in those companies, it's much more like, okay, now I'm running a team of 20, 50, 100, and I was out of the country and my card got compromised and the payroll got canceled. I mean,
it's the responsibility and like the
the
awareness of like
responsibility.
the knock-on effect for everyone around you. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And then I've got 3 more quick ones.
Yeah, we love it.
Avoiding finances. So you were talking about this, Jessica, like you knew your numbers. You weren't avoiding what was coming in, what was going out. But there are some people who just think, don't tell me, and that is obviously not the way to make more money. You have like what you focus on expands. And then like a belief that you cannot be trusted with money. Yeah. So I'm not good with it. I can't be trusted. It always comes back to a bit of a story. Something happened and now I can't be trusted. And then the last one I would say is there is a group of people that will tie their personal worth so closely to the money that they make. And so, because I had a good month or a bad month, I feel differently about my value as a person, which is not true.
It is so easy to play that game.
It's a vast majority of women who have that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Those are so great, Whitney, because I know that I've done a lot of them and I know that my clients have done a lot of them too.
Well, and I would go as far as to assume that every entrepreneur has all of these.
Yep.
And they just pop up in different ways. And, I think like Jessica, you and I were chatting yesterday, going through doing my wealth dynamics report, which was amazing. But even, we uncovered one of my money blocks in there where someone assigns Whitney homework. And as the CEO, I'm still like, okay, I have to do my homework. And Jessica pointed out, no, maybe Whitney doesn't need to do that homework. Maybe someone else does that. But it is that like personal responsibility of, someone assigned this to me, I will be responsible and complete the task when, it would be much more efficient for someone else to do it. And so Jessica and I came up with some really great things yesterday. Where only in front of clients or future clients or a camera. So here we are.
Yeah,
I'm
and
guessing
Whitney,
you have more of the steel side of wealth dynamics.
Dynamo.
Yeah, Whitney's a creator, as am I. Are you a
Okay,
star,
I was
Meghann?
thinking though more of like the mechanic side of things but
yeah, no, Whitney
cool.
doesn't. We agreed that Whitney almost doesn't have any mechanic because it's normal to be a creator and then have the two ones either side as your secondary. But we agreed actually that in Whitney's case, she's all star, no mechanic.
I'm all star.
That's where the friction is coming from. But
understand.
Whitney,
Yes.
I don't know if you're conscious that you did this, but actually you gave a really good one-liner in that you said this session is kind of like therapy and a business intervention. And I was like, that's kind of what I do. I love that.
Well, and there
write
was
that down and use that in your marketing.
Absolutely. Testimonial. But I thought it was also so interesting because when we started the call, Jessica, when we sort of uncovered these things and we both agreed I was a star, and I immediately reached for this sparkly sort of tiara that I have. And that's what I wore for the rest of the day.
You just put it on, you're like, that's confirmed.
Yes.
Okay, well that just confirms for me that I need to get a new tiara because the one I have is like a little kid's one and I can't wear it for more than like 30 seconds. So I need to get one too. Thank you.
You do need some.
You're welcome.
Makes it really fabulous. It's important.
But I do think that also is part of having a good money mindset, being in the energy of receiving. Like, when do you feel your best and are able to attract money and attract more opportunities? And it is that vibration of staying in a place where we just feel good all the time. Like I feel great when I get done up, I've got something sparkly on. That's when I make money. That's when I feel best. So that it's like you get to that energy all the time.
Yes. And actually the energy comes first, doesn't it? And straight away, when you apply that filter, you can see that if you're in a crunchy place and you're feeling like really just unsure about everything, because it's hard to be an entrepreneur. It's hard to be like the face of everything all the time. But like when we feel like that, that's when we need to do the work on our mindset the most, because actually that bad energy, and I'm using that quite light, loosely, but like that kind of negative mindset we can get into, that can actually have the knock-on effect of making it even harder for us to attract the money that we want to. And so actually it's almost, I don't know, would you say, Whitney, but if you're kind of in that place, it's becoming something that it's like, we've got to take action here, because there's no point bolting the gate after the horses run away, or whatever the phrase is.
like once it's gone, it's really hard to get it back, because your energy and your mind now goes to lack. I don't have enough, frustration.
It becomes like self-reinforcing, because that's all you can see. And then the more you see it, the more you feel it and believe it. And the more it happens, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then the energy totally takes a nosedive, because you were coming from this place of like giving and feeling good and attracting all of this abundance. And then it's just like a hammer down.
Definitely. And it does make it harder to get out of that place again. I love what you said there before, Whitney, about kind of like the way that we dress, the way that we show up, like some of the accessories maybe, but like I think it is like unique for every person, almost like their formula that they need to follow to feel good about themselves. Like what kind of, because I think for people watching, I want them to feel like there are practical things that they can start to do. I often think that actually we're in the business of writing permission slips for women to live the lives that they want to live. So like, do you have any advice for starting to cultivate that positive money mindset, like with the way that we literally show up and the things that we wear and the things that we surround ourselves with?
Yeah, I think that there's a tendency to think that you have to go out and buy all new fancy clothes and do all of these like luxurious things. And a lot of times it's looking at what you already have and then making a decision. Does it make me feel good, or does it make me not feel great? And, and then it's pretty easy to understand why, when I wear this, I don't feel good. And so why would I wear that? Like that's a really simple explanation when it comes to a closet or something like that. But I think one of the most underutilized tools is something like Spotify and having like a go-to playlist. So with some of my clients, we work on that. It's like, what is the playlist that's going to get you into the zone? What is the routine, so that when you have to do put on a show or be in front of a group of people, how do you show up like that real and authentic and best version of yourself? And so having a playlist that is full of money and, money songs or whatever songs sort of jazz you up. I like, it's like I don't think I can say the words on this show, but there are a lot of words.
Explicit lyrics? Are you saying songs with explicit lyrics? Those are my favorite personally.
Yes. There's a very explicit playlist. And I'm sure if you saw me walking down the street, you would not think that's what's going on up here, but it is. And it is one of those things where you think, I am now like bulletproof for the day. Right? Like come at me. I will take what I want. I can make big things happen. So music can be such a mood enhancer and can really elevate your performance. And I think that's one of the things that doesn't get used enough. People go to like top 40 or, a confidence boost list when it's, not really for you. But you do have to watch the lyrics. I was picking on a song the other day, and I think it was the old Gwen Stefani song, If I Was a Rich Girl.
That's not what we need.
Right. If I was a rich girl, no.
Yeah.
Right. Like there are some of these songs that should be rewritten so that we feel good listening to them, not thinking like maybe someday I might.
Which is actually kind of interesting, because I can remember early on in the junction point before hitting six figures, I actually did a money, no, it wasn't money. It was a mindset detox program that was invented by a guy on the internet. And part of that was removing all mainstream music and only listening to personal growth and development books at the time because there were no podcasts at the time. And it was great because I completely cleared the slate of any of those kinds of songs entering in for me. So that's interesting that you say that, because I can remember that. And I remember all of these. Now that we're talking about this, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the practice that I had to get past that juncture. Oh yeah, this is the one I did for that. And those things are so good for us to talk about. Like another one that I can remember getting from early, like around 125,000 to break over 250, was to have an abundance account. And so I just had 10% of everything that I was making going into an account so that I didn't touch, and I could see the money going into there. And of course, this was in addition to implementing profit first into my business, which also catapulted everything. But those things where you start to see that the abundance is everywhere and you make it an undeniable thing, right? This is happening. It's going into there. I still have sitting on my desk $1,000 worth of hundreds, which is held up by Buddha number 1 and Buddha number 2 in the wealth corner of my desk, always sitting here staring up at me saying, no worries. You got $1,000 sitting right there.
I love that.
But that is just something that's like, no matter what, if I'm having a rough day, if I'm having a day where any of those money stories or BS things that we have running around in our head come up, it's like, no, that's not actually true. Look right here.
Yeah, I love that. And it's the visual things. And I think it's really great what you said, Whitney, about it doesn't necessarily mean going out and buying something really expensive. No. It's kind of looking at what you already have, because I think where this goes into slightly like scary territory, in my opinion, is when it becomes this fake it to make it, and like spend money that you don't have to give the impression that you're really successful, when really there's this like mounting like scariness of debt behind the facade of like a business that isn't really a business. But I think like it's so important, isn't it, I think it's really important to have like factually correct businesses and like show up in a way which reflects where we truly are. But like it's how to get the balance with that, isn't it? Because I think there is often a period in business where like you know that you're kind of here like in terms of what you can do, but then the finances just aren't telling the full story yet. Sorry, Whitney, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say those are all excellent points. I think of it as sort of managing the ordinary. Like, you're cooking dinner at home anyways. Are you lighting a candle because it makes you feel rich? Are you having an amazing bath? And it doesn't mean that it's expensive bubble bath, but something that sort of makes it feel like a mood, that makes it feel like you live with luxury, or you live in this comfortable, you're having this like really awesome experience, but it's not that it cost you a lot of money to have that.
Yeah. Like, are you saying that because you know about my bath bombs?
No.
Because literally, like, one of the things that I've been like instructed to do by my coach is, like, at one point she was like, I want you to spend like $200 or $300 on as many bath bombs as you can fit in like a shopping cart online. And like, I got these like massive box deliveries, whereas previously I was like, I heard this voice in my head being like, that's $10 literally down the drain every time you take a bath. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm wasting so much money. And like, so I would sort of chop them into 4 pieces and have like 10 seconds of bath bomb and then put it in the little dish to save it. And literally, like, my coach really helpfully pointed out, this was a massive block for me. And she's like, we need to introduce like the abundance of bath bombs. And I keep it up even now. Behind me on my bottom shelf, I've got like a full box of bath bombs. And whenever I feel like having a bath, it's like, I am worth this money, because what it gives to me is so much reflected back in what I'm then able to go out and do. And I think sometimes it's spotting these things in ourselves. They can be anything from like, putting away the groceries and you realize, oh, you bought like the fancy brand of something. Oh, you shouldn't be wasting money on that. And like, it's that little voice that just likes to chip away when we're doing these everyday things, because the overall result of that adds up to complete overwhelm sometimes, doesn't it?
I think something that is so important for us to talk about is those times when we make decisions, when we know that we're in a scarcity place, and really being able to pinpoint when those times are and realize, gosh, I should not be making decisions right now, and I should be taking a pause. And that's a big one that I remember even just talking with clients about in my past life when I was a marketing coach, is being in the space of that next level also requires the decision points that are happening all the time, having that awareness of, am I in the right place, in the right mindset, in the right frame of mind right now? Because that's not 100% of the time. It's like a flower will never be flowering 100% of the time. So we're never going to be flowering 100% of the time. But I just, last year I had to make a big business decision, and then I made another decision on top of that now is affecting me 12 months later, and realizing that how scarce I was and how hard that decision point was. And it's all, it's all part of my journey, and it's all good. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. But now I'm in another squeeze point because of a decision that I made last year, which was a scarcity mindset decision. And I'm having to learn the lesson again 12 months later.
Exactly.
So I think that this is like, the up leveling of mindset is not easy. It is not easy ever. Well, sometimes it is, but when you really up level it and you really truly let go of something and you step into a new, uncomfortable, uncharted territory, it is going to feel weird. But it's that weird is different from the scarcity feeling that you feel when you're like, gosh, I know that I'm doing this so that I can get through by the skin of my teeth, versus
Absolutely.
I'm making this decision. I know that it's what's best for me. God, it sucks. Oh, this is uncomfortable, and I'm going to do it anyways. And I'm going to have, a lot of times a coach or someone around me who's going to hold my hand as I jump off this cliff.
Yeah, it's hard work, isn't it? It can shake you to your very core. And I think I've actually found there are a few things more overwhelming than like when you've just gone through like a big up level, and then suddenly like, I'm not like a steel energy in my wealth dynamics really at all, but like I take quite a lot of comfort from the predictability of a lot of my business. And when I've up leveled, suddenly I'm like, well, I don't know what's normal anymore. And it's kind of when you've had a big goal as well in your head, and you're suddenly the other side of that goal, and you're like, I didn't even know this land existed. Like, what is going on? And I think that can be like quite a destabilizing, because you kind of think, when this happens, I will drink champagne every day and I shall dance around and feel amazing. And actually, it either feels exactly the same as life before, and sometimes it feels worse. And it doesn't really make sense, but it's just this process of recalibrating to our new normal. But it can be quite like earth-shattering to realize that we have actually changed the paradigm of our entire lives just by the fact that we decided to start a business at some point. And like, oh my goodness, who knew that it was going to become the thing that it now is? Like, Whitney, what would you kind of add to that?
Well, I love what you said about reaching to the other side of your goal and being like, this is it, right? Like being at the place where you expected it to feel different. And there also is like, I was coaching with one of the ladies this morning who was stuck on what is a hidden money block. And the best advice that I gave her was, think about this person that you are right now, 5 years from now. And how does that person approach the conversation, ask what they want? Like, you have a clear picture of who this person is 5 years from now. And when you bring that person to the conversation, they handle it totally different, because they're not stuck in the habits and emotions and behaviors of like, Whitney today. This is Whitney 5 years from now. She's a big deal. Like, I'm already a big deal, but like bigger deal, and so she's a bigger deal, and she's the one that's able to, we can bring her to the conversation and ask her to show up and ask her to, handle the meeting like she would, and ask for the money she wants. And it's just such a powerful thing that we can use our mind to help us, sort of accelerate forward.
Yeah, I love that. I talk about next level self in my business quite a lot. And it's absolutely that thing of like thinking forward to like, who is this next level you? And I think it's really good to make it something really aspirational, because when you start to make decisions as that version of yourself, and I think that really speaks to what you were saying, Meghann, about making decisions sometimes in scarcity, which we all do. And I think sometimes, you know, we're ready to take a big, expansive leap. We start to do it, and then halfway through, we're like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible idea. No, change a plan, reverse. And then it's quite hard sometimes to stay in that abundance, because it can sort of be like scarcity, abundance when you're in that process of up leveling. But just having something really conscious like that you can actually say, what would me if, you know, future me of 5 years time, what would she think about this? What would she tell me to do? What did she do to get from where I am to where she is? Yeah. It's so powerful, isn't it?
I think another important piece is for people to understand that excitement and anxiety, they feel the same in the body. So when you have that feeling and you think, oh, this is it, this is my, you know, warning signal, don't proceed. No, it's probably just excitement, because your body is like is changing. You are becoming this new version of yourself, and that vibration changes everything. You know, there will be people in your life that fall away. They're not comfortable with new version of you or the vibration. I had a client recently, and that's what happened with her. Her complete vibration changed. She sort of stepped up to, okay, this is next level person. And all of the people in her life that were comfortable around her just started to fall away. And you know, the sad part about it, heartbreaking, was that she's thinking, what did I do to them? And you know, that's where some of those money blocks come in, of feeling like it's not safe for me to grow. And what she's found on the other side is like an amazing network of people now that has support her in, you know, truly in this next level, which is awesome. But vibration, people feel it.
I think that is a really important part of the process, actually, as much as like leaning forward. It's doing things consciously to say to ourselves, I'm letting go of that old version of myself. And sometimes that can bring trauma and like a bit of grief with it, can't it? Because we can let go of things and then suddenly just like realize how tightly we held on to it. But it's all part of like the growth process. And I think it's part of what makes it hard, because it's so hard to be expansive and forward thinking, but then it's also hard to let go of like that old version and release some of these things that, you know, our scarcity keeps us very safe, or at least we like to think that it does. And so I think there can be almost like a grieving process that goes alongside that. And if you're not expecting it, then if you suddenly up level and start making a lot more money in your business, it's like, why do I feel so sad? It's like, well, it's all part of the process of up leveling, isn't it?
And I think a lot of this also is, we all have our own journeys. So some may resonate with that thought of like thinking about the future self. My personal experience and my journey is that I actually have anxiety and I deal with it a lot. And so my mind is always in the future. So it is not a gift for me to think, what would future Meghann do? For me, I have to bring myself back to the present
and be grounded in that. Yeah.
In the present, and actually get grounded in knowing what my values are and looking at the decisions from that place. Because if I'm making a decision from a space that's not full of complete self-love and love for those around me, or if I'm making a decision that's not rooted in fun and that doesn't feel fun and that doesn't have that energy of fun and shift and transformation, I know it's not a good decision for me. But it's actually having the courage to get present with that and feel that at that time, and know that, yes, there will be things that you need to let go of in order for this next thing to come in. That's the way it works. We got to clear the space so that the new stuff can come in. And that's what we're talking about here with shifting our communities. You'll start finding that, I mean, the communities that I was part of pre 6 figures, the reason why I started the Dames was because they're not like those people. I couldn't be with them anymore. I was an intermediate skier trying to go to the expert level. You can't do that by going on the bunny slopes. So yes, some of the 5 people that you hang out with most has to change. And the habits that you have and the actions that you take and the things that you're doing and spending your time on kind of have to shift.
Absolutely. Great points.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like there's so many directions we can go.
I know.
So
I'm just like,
let's talk about actually, I think so in the thought process around going through higher six figures into seven figures, a lot of these things start shifting. And I think we've talked about it a little bit, but it begs to say, all right, what are some of those next levels that you might incur? What are some of those? It's never stopping, right? We've discussed that.
Right.
It's not like you get to this magic number of 777,000 and all of a sudden all of your problems disappear. You own the perfect business and now you're flying on a unicorn's back. No.
Yeah.
So what are those things that we know start to happen at different levels? And I think I can share some stuff from our 7-figure circle too, but I'm curious, Whitney, what you've experienced in that regard with a lot of clients.
I think when you've gone through a period of transformation, you've seen those up levels in your business, it's natural to think about what's next and what's the next number. And what I have found, especially when you're sort of in that place, sort of mid six figures, it gets really hard for someone to name a number. And having the clarity of, okay, it should be this number. Sometimes we go 10 rounds. How much do you want? When do you want it? Right? We'll go back and forth. And truthfully, sometimes the math doesn't even add up. It's like, I want this much per month, but I want this much over the year. And I'm thinking like, I'm not a math wizard. I just want to know the number so that we can get you locked in to, having clarity what the number is. A common thing that I see with some clients is they'll say, I want this much over the year, and don't break it down by the month. We'll just say, this is an annual target or something like that. From a mindset perspective, there's nothing wrong with having an annual target. The problem is if you have your eye set on an income number for the year, you might not get that money until December 31st of 20 whatever. And so is that okay? Like, for most people, it's not. For most business owners, you need some certainty and clarity over the course of the months and that. It's interesting because I find two things happen. It's what is my number and getting really clear and specific around how much I want and when I want it. And the other piece that pops up is, is it a little bit of a bump or is it a lot? Mm-hmm. And the comfort level with that, especially when you think, okay, it took me 5 years to make 500,000. So let's say in year 6, it should be 6. And then in year 7, maybe it should be 7. And I kind of have this belief that you make 5 and then you can make 10. You can make as much as you want, and there are different operations and different ways of looking at the strategy of it, but it's possible. And often what I find is, if we have a goal that's too small, we'd never hit it, versus if we say, how do we hit this like abnormal goal? Like, let's pick something that is outside the realm of possible. And it sort of makes your mind come up with some new ideas and new ways of thinking for how we might do that. It's getting curious about, an outcome, or getting curious about maybe a new offer or something like that, or a different way of delivering it. Anyway, so those are a couple of the things that I see that I really love when someone is making that jump.
Yeah. And I think it's really like with coming up with a huge goal, sometimes that can be a form of like disengaging with it and just being like, well, let's say a huge number and then we don't know how it's going to happen. And it's good to be unattached. But I think sometimes it's like it needs to have a bit more, like it needs to feel like that stretch, exactly what you're saying. And you touched on something there, Whitney, about kind of like our minds and how they work. And I know that a lot of what you do with your clients is actually quite specifically rewriting some of these subconscious beliefs. Like, say a little bit about that for us.
Yeah. It's my favorite thing to do. So like rewiring the way that you think about a topic, giving you a new script that sort of runs on autopilot. So I incorporate rapid transformational therapy practices and hypnotic recordings and things like that, so that you actually believe you have achieved something, that it's not just a goal forever. And so if you want to hit 100K every month in your business, guess what? You already completed that. And it's a shift in the way of thinking about things, but we really get to a place of clarity. What is the goal? And starting to make decisions and take action like that person, how they would show up. So there's some really powerful things with those scripts, because we are speaking to the subconscious. And a lot of what we cover in a transformation session is getting to the root and the cause and the reason for why you hold that belief. So you might be someone who thinks, I'm certain I have a money block because I've watched my business plateau. I don't know what it is. And so through that process, we uncover what those experiences and stories are. And then we give you a new script around money or confidence or whatever the subject matter is. So it's pretty interesting stuff. I love it.
Yeah, so Whitney has done one of these sessions for me, and she gave me a recording, and actually we're in the process of updating it, because certain things from the first recording have started to happen. But I think I was like, oh, hypnosis, I'm not sure about that. But actually my fear was that I would start believing things that weren't true. But what I actually found is that I saw how many things I was saying to myself on loop all day, every day, that were not true. Either they'd never been true or they weren't true any longer. So I'm a complete fan of the work that you do, Whitney. I've experienced myself how much of it is such a great tool to have in the mindset fight, because sometimes it feels like there's this absolute battle raging within us. And actually it's really good to have some different tricks up our sleeve to be able to handle some of these things.
Well, and truthfully, that's what I found, years ago, is that you could only coach someone so much with logic, with let's look at these proof points. You can only sort of inspire and get people excited so much. And then there is actually something very deep in there that needs to be removed. And so that is why it's so effective, is because right now you're lying to yourself about a number of things. And so we are just replacing it with a more productive lie. Don't tell yourself you're broke and you're horrible with money. Tell yourself you're a queen and you're a dame and you make, $1 million every year. And so I would rather believe that until that happens than believe, whatever this repeat that we have now. But I kind of go back to the beginning where we think about, women being wired to win. And we are, whether you are telling yourself a lie, you will make it true, or you're telling yourself a better lie, you will also make that true. So which one would you like to put your energy and effort into?
Definitely. And I think that any expert worth their weight in salt, gold, whatever the expression is, I hope it's gold, would tell you that it's a vast majority of everything in up-leveling is subconscious programming and getting rid of that. And if you have someone who is helping you with your money mindset that doesn't talk about subconscious programming, you're probably needing to upgrade your person who's helping you, for sure, because all of that is true. When you have those beliefs locked into place, your mind, your conscious mind, does everything it can to keep that truth there, because it fights for its life. Your ego fights for its life to prove that that is true. So you have to backdoor it through the subconscious to say, no, actually, that is an old, outdated belief that doesn't serve me anymore. And here's the new belief that I am working toward and that I am saying on a regular basis.
Yeah.
This is the whole thing of why affirmations work. But it's also then the practices that you start to take, right? So even the things like knowing your numbers. You may not, as a woman running a $250,000 business, you may not understand how to really read cash flow projections. You may not understand even at 500,000 how to do forecasting without the assistance of someone else. But it's going to be in your highest and best interest. And anyone who runs a 7-figure business will tell you that knowing their numbers and knowing how to read those financials and having regular meetings to look at that and realizing, oh my gosh, here's another money program I've got running the show. I'm leading that. It's absorbing out of me into the whole rest of my team. And being aware of that is crucial for hitting those next levels. So I think we started to say this earlier, but it's like being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart, especially when you get into those levels. If you want to lead a team, or if you want to lead a community, or if you're wanting to lead you're always leading your clients no matter what, that your beliefs have to up level so that you can help up level the beliefs of everybody else around you. Yeah. And I think that's what we're claiming as women, which is really a different story from men. We are carrying a lot of the paradigm of the patriarchy in us. And that is also part of what we're letting go of. That's a lot of the subconscious societal programming that's around us that a lot of people aren't even aware is running the show. So we get to also realize that for me, if I've ever tried to do anything from a male dominated energy, it blows up in my face because I can't sustain that. Yeah. I am the divine feminine. So gosh, we could go on, but we only have a few more minutes to sort of close up. So Whitney, how can people get a hold of you, and what is the best opening the door way of them getting in touch with you?
Well, I think the best way is for them to come onto my new website. So it's whitneyalexandra.co. And on there, I've also got a free audio download. So it's called Limitless Wealth. And it will help, be a great starting point to, removing some of those money blocks that you might have and shifting your money mindset.
Awesome. Beautiful. Jessica, what about you?
Yeah, like always come and connect with us on LinkedIn, all of us. We love to speak to women who've been watching. So yeah, come and find us on LinkedIn, connect with us. You can find out more about me and the work that I do. I work with 6- and 7-figure women consultants who sell their corporate consulting services. Why am I making this difficult? To corporate firms, that's all it is. But yeah, I support women consultants. So if you're in that camp, if that's how you define yourself, then come and speak to me about how I can help you with wealth dynamics, like Whitney was saying, but also with making the journey from 6 to 7 figures and from 7 figures and beyond just that bit easier. It doesn't need to be a struggle. And I think when you really get into the money mindset stuff, it starts to be something that can be easy and fun and playful instead of this like horrible struggle where you're fighting yourself every step of the way.
Yes. And I would say that in the Dames, the thing that is most helpful around money mindset is being surrounded by your peers and your mentors. So that when you're having those times and you are a 6-figure woman growing to 7 figures or 7 into 8, and you have these programs that show up and you can come to a safe space and be vulnerable and say, gosh, this is where I'm feeling limited. You have a community of women around the world who link arms around you and say, hey, let's ditch those limiting beliefs. Let's go to the next level. Let's have a call. Let's figure out how we can move you to that next level. And that's what we do in the Dames. So if you are sick and tired of being sick and tired of the old networking ways of doing things and would love an up-leveled community that is an application-based community for women running 6- and 7-figure businesses, check out thedames.co/roundtable and come to an event to see how it's done.
Yeah, I just want to say I've been in the Dames for over a year now, and it's such an exciting community because I've not sort of seen it done in the way that Meghann you model for all of us, but like it really is a wonderful thing to be a part of. Like, and I think it can be quite lonely when you get to those points in business and you're just like, all of my friends aren't really following where I'm going, and that can be an overwhelming thing in itself. So like, I fully endorse the Dames. I love it. I tell everyone about it. Like, come and try it. These roundtable events are very fun. They're very safe. Like, you don't have to make a commitment. Just see if you like it and like take it from there.
Yes, absolutely. And that is exactly right. When you're in those moments to be surrounded by others and develop new business bestie relationships, That's
That's
kind of like
lovely.
what Whitney was talking about earlier. Your friends may need to up level, your community may need to up level in order to be at the same level as your new vibration, which is almost always true. So allow yourself to do that. And it doesn't mean you have to kick your old friends to the curb just because they have a different money mindset.
You can start to inspire them in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Well, thank you, ladies, for this amazing conversation, and have a beautiful day, everyone. We hope that you've enjoyed this.
Yeah, thank you, Whitney, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.